I'm Julia Johnson for the Washington Examiner, and I'm joined today by Senator Marsha Blackburn. Thank you for joining me today, Senator Blackburn.
I'm delighted to join you. Thank you.
So you are leading several GOP senators for the Show Up Act, and this is going to force, if passed, this would force the federal agencies to go back to their pre-pandemic work policies. Why is that important?
It is important because right now, not only can our Tennesseans not get answers from some of these agencies, we ourselves, as we're trying to get information from the agencies, cannot get information. Think about what happens with the IRS and how frustrated people got this year with trying to get answers from the IRS. Well, one of the reasons for that is because people are not showing up to work there. 50 to 55% of their employees are still working remote. With the Veterans Administration, you've got 40% of their people that are working remote. And you can look at any other number of agencies, whether it's the NIH, CMS, the FDA, and their parking lots are empty during the day, and people are still working remote. So we need to go back to those pre-pandemic policies, because right now we are paying for upkeep on these buildings, we are paying to heat them, to cool them, we are paying for maintenance, but people are working remote. And we know, take for instance, the VA, they have a case backlog of over 250,000 cases. And that backlog has grown throughout COVID. And as I said with the IRS, how many people do we all know that called the IRS and could not get an answer to their questions? Maybe the phones weren't even answered. Maybe nobody ever got back to them. And government should be here to help you. Government should not be taking care of itself. These employees owe it to the taxpayers who are paying their salary to show up and do their job and answer the questions that the citizens have.
And you're also spearheading legislation so that veterans can receive care from places that aren't only the Veterans Administration.
Right. Yeah.
Why is this so important? Why can't they get that care at
You know, Julie,
VA?
it's because veterans right now are having to wait so long to get care. In Tennessee, right now, if a veteran called today and said, I need to have a primary care appointment, they would be waiting on average 100 days to get that primary care appointment. And maybe they want to get that appointment because they want to move over into community care and be able to get their care from a doctor in their community so they don't have to travel to the VA. And still having to wait 100 days before you can even start the process. Think about that. And this is difficult for our veterans. It is a very cumbersome process. It doesn't give them choice and options. So what I'm saying is, let's make certain that veterans can take their card, they can show it, they can go to the doctor, the hospital in their area, and they can get the care they need in a timely, responsible manner.
Now, is what's happening with veterans trying to get their care a glimpse at maybe what single-payer healthcare would look like in the United States?
Precisely. Very much so. When you think about the VA and having to go to one place for that care, having to go see a primary care doctor, you have veterans that are dying because they're waiting for care. And we also know that many times the VA does not have the type specialist that a doctor, that a veteran needs to see. So then they have to go through the process again to get referred out to a doctor who's in private practice who can see them. So we should shortcut that and allow veterans to seek the care they need in a timely manner.
Now, you also reintroduced the Kids Online Safety Act, which you've been working on for a while with Senator Blumenthal. What is your response to some of the opponents who say maybe the parents should be the sole people responsible for what their kids are doing.
You know, Senator Blumenthal and I have worked on this for years. Indeed, back in 2019, when I chaired the task force at Judiciary Committee looking at big tech, we were working on these issues. And then in Commerce Committee, when he was the chair and I was the top Republican, we held a series of hearings looking at big tech and what was happening to our children. And it was like we opened the floodgates. And we heard from people all across the country that said, let me tell you my story. Let me tell you what happened to my child. So for the last 3 years, we have had this legislation, working on this legislation, introduced it last Congress, got it out of committee, but the clock ran out before we got it finished this past year. Now, we reintroduced it this year with 33 bipartisan co-sponsors, original co-sponsors. And this legislation would give parents the toolbox that they need. It would require that social media platforms design for safety and that they have that safety setting by default. That parents have a portal where they can report some of these postings and videos that encourage self-harm, suicide, eating disorders, that put kids in touch with drug dealers and pedophiles. And it would give parents what they need as far as being able to control those algorithms and open up those algorithms and make them responsible, all of these social media platforms, responsible for an annual audit of what is on their site. And here's the reason that you want social media held responsible for that. And it is because right now, parents can't get this information. They can't find out about the algorithms. When they report some of this adverse content, the social media companies many times don't get back to them. And maybe it's about cyberbullying, and the social media company will not work with the parent. Maybe it's about some of these postings. And then the parent, days, weeks, months later, gets a response from the social media company that says, the content does not violate our community standards. But what we know is child entrapment, child endangerment, that's a crime. And these companies, these content generators need to be held responsible.
Now, on this topic of social media, TikTok has become a national security concern and just a concern for some of those harmful things that might happen to children.
Yes.
You've announced support for a ban. What would be the most effective way to implement an absolute ban of TikTok?
TikTok is a national security risk. It is a surveillance tool of the Chinese Communist Party, and they are, in essence, building a copy of you, your virtual you. They follow your keystrokes. They build basically a database of where you go and what you do when you are online, the type videos that you watch, the transactions that you make. So when you've got TikTok on your phone, the Chinese Communist Party is who is going to benefit from access to that data. TikTok is owned by ByteDance. ByteDance is a Beijing-based company. The Chinese Communist Party has a board member and a seat on that ByteDance board. And their governance documents for ByteDance allow their board members, thereby the CCP, to have access to their data. Now, TikTok likes to say, well, no, we house our data differently, but still, they have that governance. That's why TikTok is such a problem. Banning TikTok, of course, that is why we have moved forward to ban it from government devices, from devices of our military. And yes, indeed, we do have tremendous concerns. I've talked with moms who have lost their kids because they've done the TikTok choking challenge, and it went terribly wrong, and their death was an accident. I've also talked to parents whose kids have met drug dealers on TikTok. This is something that you need to look at these challenges. You need to see what is happening here. You have this content, things we would never allow our kids to be exposed to in the physical space, but on some of these platforms and certainly on TikTok, they're being exposed to these things.
Now, another big thing that's just happened last week was we saw the end of Title 42. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas says that they're prepared, and he says that they've actually had less encounters in the last couple days. Do you believe that they're prepared?
It is obvious that the Department of Homeland Security is not prepared for what is happening at the border, and this is still a crisis. It is a crisis every day. When you look at the numbers of people, 6,000 people a day, on track to have 2.5 million migrants coming across this border this year, and that is those that are apprehended. Think about the gotaways, the people they can see on surveillance. And they had a record number of gotaways, people they could see but couldn't get to them. And then you've got the unknown gotaways, the people that when they're out on patrol, they find where individuals have crossed and they've left carpet shoes and clothes and IDs, and they have just literally walked into our country uninvited to create a new identity for themselves. And that is why we should be concerned. We know that 332 terrorists have been apprehended. We know one from Afghanistan. Someone on the terrorist watch list was apprehended this weekend. So that's in the people we know. Think about who is in the ones we don't know. We've apprehended dozens of gang members, MS-13 gang members. We have apprehended dozens of criminal aliens. We have apprehended thousands of pounds of fentanyl. And you look at what they're apprehending every day, every week. This is a crisis. And this administration was not prepared for this. They do not have a plan of how they're going to handle it, but they're turning every town into a border town, in every state into a border state. And because the American people are saying, hey, drug overdoses are so prevalent in our communities, most of them are meth and fentanyl, and primarily fentanyl, and it's coming across the southern border. And we've got an administration that continues to say we're going to find more ways to make illegal legal. They want to say if you use an app, you can come in. And they don't count all the drugs. When they tell you how much they're apprehending, they're not putting in that total. What Border Patrol is apprehending out and about, they're not putting in that total. What air and marine operations are apprehending, they're not putting in that total. What your local sheriff or your police department is apprehending. We are allowing the cartels who are running the Mexico side of that border to really create a humanitarian crisis in our country. And the cartels are big businesses. They're making millions of dollars every single week. And they are pushing people into this country and then basically looking at us and saying, okay, now it's your job. You get them to wherever they want to go in the country. And the cartels are telling people, look, you'll get in the country, you'll claim asylum, they will send you wherever you want to go, and then you can work for us. We'll put you in a sex trafficking ring, a drug trafficking ring, an MS-13 gang. I mean, the cartels really have quite an operation that they are running, and this needs to stop. We have to secure our southern border. We have to give Border Patrol what they need, which they've told us for decades. They need a physical barrier on the southern border where they can't have that barrier. They need technology and they need more agents and officers.
Thank you for joining me today, Senator Blackburn.
Delighted to join you. Thank you.
I'm Julia Johnson for the Washington Examiner, and you can find more exclusive interviews at washingtonexaminer.com.